The Tholin Foulbeard fusion has launched, and as you can see, it's a classic fusion. But don't worry, I have your no-fail fusion plan in this video. But before I get to the plan, I want to give a quick review of Tholin himself for those of you who have not yet decided whether or not you're going to go for this champion. I am Colred. This is Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. Let's get started. Here he is, Tholin Foulbeard. As you can see, a Force Affinity attack-based legendary from the Dwarven faction. A very cool-looking champion. I like his aesthetic a lot. Apparently, he's killed a bunch of demons, and then he's taken their spikes and put it all over his armor, even made a big spike for his hammer, which I like. I think that's very cool. Plus, it's event appropriate, right? We have the Chaos Awakes event going on, where the Dwarves, Sylvan Watchers, and Shadowkin factions, those are the Nyrusin Union, they are fighting against the Demon Spawn, so makes sense for this event's fusion champion to have this aesthetic. I like it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the base stats. Remember, he is an attack-based nuker, so here the HP is below 15k. That's on the low side. He's going to be a bit squishy. The attack number, however, is outstanding at 1674. That's one of the higher attack numbers you'll see in this game. I don't know if it's like top 5 or top 10 in the game, but it's definitely in the top, I would say 5%. It's probably, very, very high. Now we have a defensive number 914. That's about standard for attack-based nukers. Speed of 100, which is solid. And then, the extra crit damage, of course. No accuracy in his kit. There's going to be a debate about whether or not you need accuracy in his kit. And it all starts with his A1. So let's take a look at that now. Demon Breaker attacks all enemies before attacking, has a 25% chance, actually books to a 50% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff on for 2 turns. I love AoE A1s, and I love weaken debuffs, and this has got both. Now, it's only a 50% chance, but that will get a 25% additional boost here if the target is from the Corrupted Alliance, or a boss, or a minion. Plus, this effect cannot be resisted by enemies from the Corrupted Alliance, or if they're bosses or minions. So this is where the debate about accuracy is going to come in. This is the only thing in his kit that requires accuracy, and potentially against the boss or a minion, you don't need accuracy at all, also against the Corrupted Alliance. However, if you're going to potentially use him as an arena nuker, and you want this weaken to land, you may have to use accuracy because you're not guaranteed to be fighting against enemies from the Corrupted Alliance unless you're only using him for that very small niche, right? You're saying, oh, I'm going up against this specific Corrupted Alliance kind of team, and so then I'm going to pick that. So, I mean, this is an event-appropriate passive on this skill. I don't love the Corrupted Alliance part, but the boss and minion part is really cool. Plus, there's this extra part. Grants an extra turn if a weakened debuff was placed on all enemies by this skill. So, if you land a weaken on everybody, you get an extra turn with your A1, which is silly. Right now, you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, so it's 50% chance, 75% chance, right, if it's a Corrupted Alliance boss or minion. But here's the thing. If it's only one enemy, you only have to land one weaken. So if you're going up against the clan boss, and you land your weaken, you're guaranteed an extra turn. If you're going up against Dragon and you land your one weaken, you're guaranteed an extra turn. If you're going up against Iron Twins or Sand Devil or Phantom Shogun, if you go up against any boss that doesn't have minions, you don't have to have the extra RNG. It's just going to be a straight up 75% chance or 80% chance if you take Sniper Mastery. So if you get an 80% chance of landing it, that means you get an 80% chance of an extra turn. That is bonkers, right? When we talk about Relentless set is 18%. This is 80% on your A1. Now, if this were an A2 or an A3, I think it should be a guaranteed chance for a legendary. But on an A1, an 80% chance of an extra turn, that's kind of nuts. That's going to reduce these cooldowns quite a bit. It's also an AoE A1. So if you do happen to have, multiple targets, let's say you landed on, I don't know. Spider would be tricky, right? Because you're going to have a lot of spiderlings. But if you did, basically you're going to be slamming those spiderlings again. So pretty cool. Let's take a look at the A2. Back to the Abyss. Attacks one enemy 2 times on a 3-turn cooldown. 1, 2, 3. Each hit will ignore 25% of the target's defense. However, again, same thing that we saw before. Corrupted Alliance boss or minion, you get an additional 25% ignore defense. So there you're ignoring 50% of the target's defense instead. Now, this is great. This means you're always ignoring a boss or minion's defense by 50%. Each hit also decreases the target's attack by 5%, stacks up to 25%, and each hit also increases this champion's attack by 5% up to 50%. So this guy is sort of intended for long fights. Now, it might not feel that way because his defensive stats aren't great, but you could think about maybe putting him in an unkillable clan boss team or an unkillable team, or just a team where he's going to be protected so that he doesn't die, because he will be squishy. So I like this. I like this kind of ramping increase of attack. It's a little bit like a ninja passive, but this is more direct, right? It doesn't go up to 100%, but you also don't have to use all 3 skills. It's literally you use the skill and you get it, which is kind of cool. Okay, now Rabid Fury, which is the A3, again on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies 2 times. Before attacking, this guy will self-buff himself with increased attack. I really like that for an attack-based champion. And then for each critical hit landed on the first hit, increases the damage dealt on the second hit by 10%. So this is one of those abilities. I'm already thinking spider, right? Because if you have a bunch of spiderlings out, if you hit 10 of them, you're going to increase the damage on the second hit by 10%. So if you don't kill anybody on the first hit, you're just going to blow up the wave on the second hit. We'll ignore unkillable and shield buffs. So this could also be potentially useful for arena, of course, again on a 3-turn cooldown. But with this extra turn mechanic on the A1, both of these have chances of, getting their cooldown effectively reduced by that A1. Now we have a passive, activates Demon Breaker. So activates the A1 every 5th turn this champion takes. This is Demon Breaker. Enemies from the Corrupted Alliance bosses and minions cannot land a critical hit on this champion, which I think doesn't matter really at all. Bosses and minions only have a 15% chance to land a critical hit. And enemies from the Corrupted Alliance, if you're in arena, it might save you 1 time, maybe. But chances are, with his defenses, he's going to be crushed by any regular hit anyway. So I don't see this as a particular way to really make him tankier. Chances are you're going to have to do something special to keep this guy alive. But this first part activates Demon Breaker skill every 5th turn this champion takes. So imagine, let's say, you go 1, 2, 3. And then you get an extra turn, and so you go 4. You have to go here again, right? And then all of a sudden you're going to go 5, and then you're going to get the extra turn here. You're going to go 6. This has a chance of then proccing again, right? Which is going to give you 7. It's going to give you 7 attacks in 5 turns. Actually, it's going to give you really 7 attacks on 4 turns, right? Because you're getting that extra turn. So it is a turn, but when your enemy, if you're pacing your enemy, they're going to go 4 times. You're going to go 7 times, potentially. That's crazy. That's bonkers. All right. And I do think this means that you could consider him for a Relentless set. Now, obviously, he's a damage dealer, so you probably want to have something that ignores defense, and Relentless makes it really hard to ignore defense. But there's still a thought there, right? You could also go not Relentless, but go for the Merciless, right? And what is it? You need all 9 pieces of Merciless, and that's going to give you a 15% chance of an extra turn. That's probably going to be his best build to get that 9-piece Merciless and do that, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see how his multipliers are and what people can come up with in terms of team compositions built around this guy. I think he's going to be really interesting with this extra turn mechanic on the A1. He's going to be good for boss fights. He's going to be potentially good in arena. He's going to be good in wave content. He's potentially going to be good in Hydra. He's a good affinity for things like live arena. I mean, this guy really, the only downside to him, I think, is going to be that he's squishy. But if he hits decently hard, this guy reminds me a little bit of like a, like in terms of how good he is, I don't think, I mean, I'm thinking dwarf, so I don't think he's as good as Newt. But I do think potentially he's as good as maybe Thor. right? And that's maybe the last really good damage dealing fusion that we had was Thor. And I think this guy could be on par with Thor. He could be a little, he's not the same as Thor. He's a little bit different. He doesn't have the slow. He doesn't have the stun, but he's got the weaken. He's got this ramping ability. So in long fights, maybe he's even better. We'll have to see. But I do think that you're not going to want to skip this guy. I will definitely be going for this guy on, well, I only have one account now, so I'll be going for him on my main account. But I would definitely consider deeply what you want to do with your account before you skip this. If you're in the early game or the mid game and like you have an opportunity to get this guy as your first fusion or one of your first 5-6 fusions, I would say he's going to transform your account. He is going to be an account carry in so many ways. I think you could use him everywhere. He might even be he might be one of the fastest campaign farmers in the game, as far as I know, right? He's got the A1 into the A3, potentially back to the A1, or just A1 it all the way out. I don't know what his AI is going to look like, right? But yeah, this guy is going to be extremely good in a lot of places. So definitely, be careful about this one. Don't skip it if you don't have to. That's what I would definitely say. Is he a must get? Well, that's up to you. I don't like to say that. I think you can still have a very successful account even without doing fusions at all. Also, don't waste your resources. If you think, hey, I'm going to go for this guy, but you don't actually have the resources to get him, that's not only going to mean that you miss this fusion, but you're going to miss the next fusion. And that's something that we talk about when we do our no-fail fusion plan. So let's go ahead and take a look at his calendar. And I'll kind of walk you through the steps for making sure that you can get this guy. Here is our fusion event calendar. Once again, it is a classic fusion. So we have a Void Affinity Rare, and then we have this Magic Affinity Epic. Now, you don't have to get a copy of the Epic directly, but because it is a Magic Affinity Epic, there's going to be something that we're going to talk about. Some of us are going to get lucky and get a copy of this guy, so you just want to keep that in mind. Now, you can, of course, get a guaranteed copy from the Summon Rush here, and an Epic is worth 4 copies of the Rare, so that would allow you to skip up to 4 events if you wanted to, or keep a copy of the Rare if you'd like. Now, I checked out both of these champions. I'm not going to do full reviews. I think the Rare is underwhelming. He's got a block debuffs. He's an okay champion. I just don't think he's all that good. The Epic is actually a little bit better. I think the Epic is decent. He's an ally protector, potentially a squishy ally protector, which is like, you may as well not have one, but he's also a provoker and might be good in some cases. And of course, if you can't go for the full fusion, you may as well get some copies of these, because even if you don't use them, those are chickens. And this is where you can do those triple dips, quadruple dips in terms of the event calendar. And we're going to go ahead and walk through this so you can see what I mean. So let's go ahead and start. Today is Thursday, or maybe you're seeing this on Friday, but I'm recording this on Thursday. And as you can see, the Dungeon Divers event and the Spider Tournament are already both going. So if you want to get into these two, you can go ahead and start. However, if, like me, you have a solo Spider champion, you might want to wait another half a day so that you can get some champion training done all at the same time. And that's a really nice quadruple dip, right? If you can do 1, 2, 3, plus, of course, the dungeon itself and the drops and the silver there. So think about that, because, the champion training tournament is significant, and you can go ahead and do several days of the Spider Tournament or 2 days of the Spider Tournament during that champion training tournament if you have the solo champion, or even like a duo for Spider. It's very much worth it if you can do that. But if not, you can just be firing away. You might even be done with the Spider Tournament, because that tends to be really fast. Now, we have a Summon Rush here. This is going to be the Epic event. Now, there's something to talk about here. I'm gonna kind of go out of order here. I want to talk about the Champion Chase Tournament. Okay, so one thing that you can do in order to complete this fusion event is just do all of these events, and you don't have to worry about this second part of the Summon Rush, because what's going to happen is there are going to be 2 reward totals, right? You're going to get the Rare, and then if you go further up in the Summon Rush reward track, you're going to get this Epic. Now, the first part, the rare part, will probably take 5 to 6 sacred shards worth of points. Now, you don't have to use sacred shards, but those tend to be the best bang for your buck. That's you get the most points for the fewest resources. If you're trying to do this with other shards, you're basically going to be paying a premium. Now, on top of that, the second part can take anywhere from 2 to like another 6 shards based on what we've seen in the past. So it's possible that we could actually get both of them for as little as 7 sacred shards. That's highly unlikely. It's more likely to be 9 or 10. The most common, number here that we've seen is 9 or 10, I think. But let's now think about the champion chase, right? If you're doing the champion chase tournament, this also typically takes 5 to 6 sacred shards worth of points. Sometimes, in fact, it's even 7. Sometimes they ramp it up a little bit if something else is going on. So if you think about this cost is almost guaranteed to be less than this cost if you're using sacreds. Okay? However, this weekend, from Friday through Sunday, this is a 2 times weekend, and it is most likely to be a 2 times ancient weekend. Now, I love 2 times ancients for the champion chase because I have a lot of them. Usually you can do this for like 70 or 80 ancients. Plus, remember with the champion chase tournament, you can use your fragment champions. You can use your permanent fusions. There are other ways to get points here. Obviously you have mystery shards for both of these. But so you might be sitting on a lot of ancient shards, and then you're going to be pulling a lot of shards for this champion chase. And then there's one extra thing to consider. This epic is a magic affinity epic, which means you will be able to pull him from ancient shards. So it's probably too risky to bank on the fact that you're going to get that epic. You don't want to plan on getting that epic. But if you skip this summon rush, what you could do is pull all your ancient shards during the champion chase and hope you get an epic. And if you do, then you can skip like the last 4 events. Or actually, probably what you would do is you would skip this champion training, this dungeon divers, and then this gear enhancement, and probably the Fire Knight tournament, unless the Fire Knight tournament had like Savage gear and you wanted to go for it. But you could potentially skip those 4 if you happen to pull your copy of the epic right there. Now, there's a chance you might still do champion training. We're going to talk about that in a second. But so, and you're not going to skip Classic Arena Takedown probably. So you might just skip 3 of the events and save yourself a little bit of time and effort. But so that's the debate right now. Now, you could say, I want a copy of this epic. I like this epic. In which case, if you go on the summon rush, you do the summon rush, you get your copy of the epic. And then during the champion chase, you still pull all your ancients. And then you have a chance. If you hit on the ancient shard, you're going to be able to keep that copy of the epic. And that's a nice bonus there, right? But so this is a little bit tricky. I do think the best value for players who are a little bit more advanced, maybe late into the mid game, is to be going for this second part of the summon rush to get your free epic and then potentially have an easier ride the rest of the way. You can still decide to pull your 2 times ancients if you want, or you could hold back a little bit. It's entirely up to you. So again, you're not going to be using sacreds here, probably, right? Why would you when you have a 2 times ancient event? But I just wanted you to be aware of the relative price, I guess, in-game price of each of these events. Okay, so that's just the starter. I wanted to get into that right away. But let's go ahead and talk through the rest of the fusion event. I think it's relatively straightforward, but I do want to mention one thing that you want to keep in mind. We have the event dungeon open right now, and the event dungeon does give you points for dungeon divers. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, so like I said, I think, dungeon divers and spider tournament, I'm going to be holding off until tomorrow to do this with my champion training. The summon rush, I'll have to think about it, but you know, depending on the point total, if the point total is low, if this takes 9 or fewer sacreds, I'm probably going to go for the bonus. If it takes 11 or more, I'm probably not going to go for the bonus, and I'll just go all the way down. Yeah, and that's probably going to be my breaking point. The weird one is if it's going to be 10. If it costs exactly 10, then I'm going to be like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know. It'll depend on how I feel about pulling mystery shards, I suppose. All right, so the gear enhancement event will be after this spider tournament. That shouldn't be too bad, but remember, that's going to take 20 million in silver. Oh, yeah, by the way, the spider tournament usually takes about 2,000 in energy. And again, the Dungeon Divers takes 5,000 in energy, right? But remember that spider tournament energy is going into the Dungeon Divers. So be aware that 2K energy should be free. This 2K should be free if you're putting all of it into the Dungeon Divers. For the Champion Training Tournament, this is always a weird one because it really is going to be a mix of whether or not you are doing it entirely in campaign, you're doing some campaign and some like dungeon stuff, or if you're doing it all in the tavern. You're going to have to figure out your energy there, so be aware of that. I do my Champion Training tournaments in the tavern for the most part, so like I'm going to do the spider double dip with food, and then I'm going to do the rest with the tavern. So this could be anywhere from 0 energy up to like another 5, 6, 7K energy, depending on how you wanted to do it. The classic arena takedown, those are always easy. Just be active. As long as you're in silver or above, you're probably fine. Maybe if you're in like silver 1, it might be a problem. But I think if you're higher, you should be fine. Just be active. Be aware of that, though. Keep an eye on those timers. The Ice Golem tournament, again, is another 2K energy, but it's also embedded in this Dungeon Divers event. Now here, this is where I want to talk about this. I don't think it's worth overspending on the Ice Golem, and this is the only dungeon event during this Dungeon Divers. So go into the event dungeon and spend your other 3K energy in the event dungeon. Now, the event dungeon, I think we've done tests on this before. Stage 20 is still basically the same as the stage 20 of the regular dungeons. So it's going to be about the same amount of energy and about the same amount of efficiency. However, if you can do better than stage 20 in the event dungeon, you're probably going to want to, because I think I typically farm stage 24, or you can even farm stage 30, because you want that pinpoint gear. That's incredibly important. Gear enhancement event, the second one, again, 20 million silver. Remember, you don't need all this silver today because you're going to be getting silver from all of your tournaments. And this is a 14-day or 15-day fusion event calendar, so you're going to be getting silver every day. But I would highly recommend that, right now, today, on Thursday, June 5th, that if you have, say, less than 5 million silver, you're going to have to be creative about getting as much silver as you can. But you can certainly do it as long as you have, say, 10 to 15 million. That would be more than enough to get you on, the right path for completing all of these gear enhancement events. And again, if you're going for the extra epic and you get an opportunity to skip events, you might want to think about skipping gear enhancement events. Sometimes you want to save silver. I usually like to skip Dungeon Divers if I can, but sometimes it's just convenient to do Dungeon Divers like it is right now on this launch weekend, right? This spider tournament and the champion training are going to be so good for me, so I'm not going to skip that Dungeon Divers. Now, the Dragon tournament looks like it lines up for a day. So for this first half of the Dragon tournament, you don't want to do anything. That's going to be tricky. You're going to feel like you need to wait. Go ahead, put your energy into, like right here from the end of this Dungeon Divers to the beginning of this champion training. That's the dead spot. Just do your dailies, right? Do your daily stuff. Hold on to the energy. And then for the first day here, you definitely want to put it into champion training. So do some campaign. That's going to get you some silver. It's going to get you some chickens. That's all great. Then during here, again, you've got the 2K that you're going to drop into the Dungeon Divers. And then the rest of the way, you're going to do the event dungeon over here. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's a lie. I messed up. You're actually going to put in another 2K in the Fire Knight tournament. So that 2K goes there. And then the last 1K goes into the event dungeon. Unless you really want to farm Fire Knight more, which you could. Or if you wanted to farm Dragon tournament more, if you could. Like if they're doing a speed, a speed event there. However, Dragon Tournament, you can probably use a solo champion, and so you could potentially triple dip with the champion training. So use food in the Dragon Dungeon, get your Dragon points, get your champion training points, get your dungeon diving points. Oh, it's a quad dip, and get your, your gear drops. So yeah, potential quad, what did we call it? Quad dip for the Dragon Tournament there. Yeah, so that's not bad at all. Again, we've already talked about the Champion Chase Tournament. Again, the 2x Ancients here, that's probably what you're going to want to do. And usually it's somewhere in the vicinity of 70 to 80 Ancients. Sometimes it's a little bit more. Remember, there's RNG involved. So I would say if you have 100 Ancients, you're in really good shape. If you have less than that, could be a problem. If you have a lot of gems, remember that you can always buy Ancient Shards in the in-store shop. You get 11 shards for, I think it's 900 gems. So that's not a bad thing to do here during a champion chase where you get a lot of extra value. Again, this classic arena tournament, not going to be a problem. Gear enhancement event, another 20 million. And there you go. So based on the fact that we can put all 4 dungeon tournaments into Dungeon Divers events, we don't need a lot of extra energy. So I'm going to call this at a minimum, probably 16K energy. Of course, it could be a lot more. You could go up to like 22, 23, 24, depending on what you're doing in campaign. And if you're over farming for the Dungeon Divers, I don't know. I would, like I said, I would just get into the event dungeon. So 16,000 energy as a minimum. Remember, I did a video on this earlier this year. If you haven't heard, you get about 1,000 energy a day, as long as you're being active, right? As long as you're generating all of that passive energy each day, that's 480 plus all the other sources of energy. You get you can get as much as like 1,400 or 1,500, maybe even 1,600 energy in a day if you need it without spending any gems. But of course, if you need to spend gems, you go ahead and do that as well. Okay, so that's the energy. As far as the silver is concerned, it's roughly 60 million silver for the 3 gear enhancement events. And then in terms of shards, you're going to be looking at somewhere between, maybe on the low end, something like 7 all the way up to, depending on what you do with, the Champion Chase Tournament. I'll just call it 7 plus Sacreds. And let's actually we'll do the Ancients. We'll call 70 to 80 Ancients. So again, I'm thinking, let's actually do this. I don't like this. No, I can't do that so easily. But so let's call this 10 sacreds for now. And again, keep your eye on those point totals. So tomorrow the summon rush is popping. It's opening or popping. It's popping. The summon rush is popping tomorrow, so we'll know the point totals really early, and you can figure that out. And then right away, you're going to know whether or not you want to go for this summon rush, or whether or not you're going to have to lean into this champion chase or whatever it happens to be. Now, if you do happen to go for this summon rush, remember that you could skip the champion chase, but it still might be a good time to pull. And so you're likely to end up with at least 1 extra copy of a champion if that happens. And so think about where you want to skip. So if you're light on silver, you skip a gear enhancement event. If you feel like skipping something else, you could skip a champion training. That's usually a good one to skip as well. And just hold on to those chickens that you make for the next fusion event, or the Titan event for the soul that's likely to happen right after this fusion event ends. Okay, so there it is, your no-fail fusion plan. I hope that helps you out. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, or if you noticed if I missed anything or made a mistake, also put that in the comments below. All right, thanks so much for hanging out today. I have been Colred, and I will see you in another video soon.